I welcome Akshay Dodiwala for this podcast. I think there are a lot of people who are not behind the insights of what engineering can be or how an engineer could be in the society. I think as a founder and the lead data scientist at Data Profile, also a Microsoft certified developer, I think he has been hosting a lot in terms of how the community events has to happen, and also he is the organizer of TFUG Ahmedabad. That gives me an immense pleasure of inviting him to this podcast. I think we will demystify some thoughts process in order to behave like an engineer, be like an engineer, work for the community, and also rock and rumble as an engineer. So let's just get started, sir.
First of all, thank you for having me on this podcast. And it's a pleasure to share my thoughts with you all.
Yeah, thanks. That's an amazing thing. Accepting the podcast request at a very short notice and coming. Yesterday I gave you the question, and today you're on the
Anything for
podcast.
the community.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So yeah, let's just start with the question, by the way.
Sure.
Uh, I just, you have been in computer vision for quite a long time, and that hustle of working in the technology for quite a long time, that means probably your experience is equivalent to my age. That sort of, not in terms of the number, but in terms of the problem statements that you have solved. That's for sure. That's what I think. I always had this question of, are the living entities in the computer interaction, human computer interaction with the computer, is it just a simulation? What do you feel about it?
I'm not sure that I would consider it as a simulation right now because we give instruction to that particular kind of hardware which we have. And that's totally different from the, you can say it's emotionless, it's science-less, or it doesn't have the common sense which a human does. I'm not aligned to that thought that it's just in simulation. It's just a piece of, you can say, a stick which helps you walk. It's just a tool which we use to move ahead in our life and make our task easy. That's all.
You know, there has been a lot of speculations here and there that we are trying to build brain on a burning box, a CPU. You know,
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
that's actually the approach which every scientist in the world is giving, because nobody has completely demystified what intelligence is, and nobody has the proper experience of what intelligence is also. But yet we are never losing that hope and that ambition of building a brain on such a silicon entity. I always had this question of what was inside the computer when you were young, and when you first saw a computer, what was that age all about, and what's actually inside computer architecture according to you?
Uh, as you said that I saw my first computer at the age of around 7 or 8 when I was in third or fourth grade of my schooling.
Which
My
year?
father, uh, seventh or eighth, third or fourth grade,
Which year? That means probably 2000.
around 2004.
Yeah, yeah, that's the time slot which I'm looking for.
That's around 2004, I guess. Yes. Uh, my father had brought this windowed box, which we call it now. And that was the first time I was fascinated by the computer that this kind of machines can also exist. And I was not sure that what to do with it. And I fiddled around it and crashed it in just 2 hours. Was not aware of how things work. And yeah, I had cost my father a lot of time to uh, recalibrate it for his usage. So yeah, that was my first experience with it. About the computer architecture, as you said, that it's not much different from what it was earlier and now, because computer architecture in terms of hardware, it's like you give some input and it generates a sequential code and then it gives you output. That's the thing. And there are certain layers that CPU is there, memory is there, logical processes between CPU and memories are there. Yeah, that remains the same, but it has been a bit faster than what used to be. The first computer which I had around 512 MB of RAM. Right now, I am using 64 gigs of RAM in my own laptop as of today.
Alienware?
And now it's a custom build.
Okay, okay, okay. No, like also when you told about you costed a lot for your father, now there is a lot of improvement in fault tolerance.
Yeah,
Obviously,
definitely.
there is a lot of improvement in the fault tolerance. What was life before? Like you have been in engineering field for quite a while now, and you have been thinking of being an engineer for quite a while now. Do you remember those
Mhm.
days where there was no TensorFlow at all? How was it?
Yeah, I remember those days. As I started my journey of being a data scientist in my early junior college time, around 11th grade, that's what we call in Gujarat. I started learning data science during those times. TensorFlow was in an, you can say, an alpha stage by that time, but not that much popular. So what I had to face is I had to fiddle around the research papers and implementing the on paper code which they had, and that's the way I learned the data science and had the grasp of learning it. The life before TensorFlow was, but you can say like an C# programmer, that you don't have any other architecture. You have to code your APIs on your own and do stuff with your own programming. It was thing like that. But after TensorFlow, yes, I am sure that our workload has been reduced by half.
No. When you told about the workload which has been reduced by half, I got this question all of a sudden. You have worked in lot of technologies, let it be computer vision and any other thing. You know, when you just shared me your resume, I was like, okay, ऐसा projects भी है जिंदगी में करने के लिए. I was kind of that. No, I just want to ask you this one question. What's that one technology which fascinated you even today? Which even fascinates you today? If I leave my job, next job I'm going to do is from this technology only. What's the technology which has made you fascinated from the young age, or else what's the fascinating thing about that technology also?
I would say, and I would stick to the one motto that deep learning is my life. That is the thing that you input anything. You give image, you give text file, or you give anything to a neural network, and it will give you a certain output which you desire. The fascination is it's like a small child's brain. It's empty right now. What you feed will be given back to you in that particular amount, and you don't know that what will be the result. You don't know how it will work, and that's what fascinates me the most. That have a piece of code which is just about 100 lines in size can do such a miracle, and can process many things. It's so flexible that I can also use it for my own purposes to create funny cartoons. From funny cartoons to analyzing black holes from the images which we capture from telescopes. That's how the scope of deep learning is, and that's what is fascination to me.
You told a general technology which is just deep learning. It's not about whether bioinformatics, neuroscience, or anything. Let me just dig
No,
into that one question. I always had this: what will be the view of an deep learning engineer about the statistics? Now I just want to ask you this one question: what is statistics according to you?
according to me, statistics uh, is an method, or rather say a basic step to fiddle around the data, to generate insights from the data, that what kind of data I have, what I can gain from it. If you go via a data engineer's perspective, then it's a feature engineering step that you do with your data. You cut it, you mold it, you merge it, and do and sorts of things defined in the statistical approaches and get insights from it. That's what the statistics is. It's so important to me at the moment that if a customer gives me any kind of data, I would first fiddle around with the basic statistical methods which I have, and then only give code to the client that this is what I will charge you, and this is what can be done with your data. Because data can give you a number of insights. It can give you trends, it can give you hidden correlation with each other, and that's the way you move ahead in data engineering and ahead steps of machine learning. And that's why this basic step is very much necessary and it's that important.
Yeah, you told about the basic steps on how the technology can be in the
Hmm.
form factor of using the APIs, and you also told about it was just like a C sharp code, which never had
Yeah,
any architecture before.
never
You
had any
know,
architecture.
having an experience of that sort, how can you say your views on the future form factor of how the technology can be? We are all moving towards the edge. Of course, you might be having 64 gigs of RAM in your laptop. That's a custom built laptop. But yet, world is moving towards the edge because nothing can be processed in the cloud because there is a lot of latency involved in it. What's that form factor that you view or you visualize now that this will be the form factor of the future about the technology?
If you talk about 10 to 15 years in the future, yes, I think that we will have more advance in space, medical, and robotics at the moment, because we can see that instead of CPU servers, we have GPU servers with us and GPU server farms. Also,
TPUs
quantum computer.
also.
Yeah, TPUs are also there, and quantum computer claims are have also been made by two industries. So yes, in up to 15 years, I can see that lot of advancement and research based implementations into these sectors due to hardware acceleration and software capabilities, which we have at the moment.
You told about the software capabilities. Are the software architecture that stable today, or else are they that rugged in order to give that AGI? And also, my question actually moves more towards, will we ever have an AGI in the future? Just like a human being, a machine behaving like a human. Will we ever have it?
Not in the near future, but if you talk about 2, 3 decades ahead of our time, but yes, at that particular point of time, I can see that uh, AGI is possible, and it's an conceptual thing right now, but it has the potential to go into that depth, that an piece of machine can behave like an human being. Not that much into the sensual or emotional portions of the life, but yes, we can see that Alexa being a real thing in the life.
Yeah, when you told about Alexa being real thing, these are just problem statement which was solved by company in chunks. They just went
Hmm.
through it, they just bought the NLP model, then all these algorithms
Hmm.
started flowing in and out. As an organizer of community and also one of the best data scientists that I have ever seen, in terms of
No, I'm not the best.
no, in terms of you giving the support to the community, or else in terms of you appreciating the work which is done by the community or anything. I feel that you are the one of the best data scientists that I've ever seen. I just want to ask you this one question on what makes a problem statement unique according to you. You told about black holes being observed from the telescope images and analyzing it through the deep learning and a lot of things. What makes the problem statement unique, and also how to approach it? These days we have this problem of approaching a problem statement. What's your view on
Definitely.
approaching the problem statement, and also what makes it unique according to you?
The uniqueness of an any problem statement is that for me is a bit of research being done to solve that problem. Just consider an example. A few days ago, I had a task or rather same project wherein I had to build a neural network which can directly solve mathematical problems. User will input an NLP question, a free hand NLP question. Machine will understand it and it will generate the result of the equation. It will actually derive the solutions. that x plus y equals to 34, then this equation of two variables will be solved down the line. So that's how a unique problem should be, that you can you have a brain fart at some point of time, that what should I do and how should I approach it. That's what I like in my projects. About solving the problems, as you mentioned earlier, that yes, right now we have a problem of approaching any problem. So what I would do is, what I do is I break down the problem into chunks. That first, yes, I have this with me, I want to do this, and these are the options I have. If I don't know the options, I go out there, search it, talk to some people who have worked around the similar area, and then I implement my own thoughts into that. Research of any kind is necessary to approach any problem. First of all, break down it, collect what you have, then see what the end goal is, and then merge those two things and do 2 plus 2 equals to 4. That's how you will approach any kind of problem easily. Because you can see that if you were given 10 GB of data, 10 GB of CSV file, then you would be baffled that what to do with this file. So first of all, I have a set of rules with you, that no, I have this kind of rules. I first do data analytics on this. I'll plot some graphs, and then I'll approach this kind of problem. And then if I have enough data with me, I'll go into the implementation phase. If I don't have enough data, then I'll do some data collection via some SMEs, that is subject matter experts. We'll collaborate with them and then implement the problem. We are not the experts of those fields. I'm an IT guy. I don't know how to approach an e-commerce problem. I can build an e-commerce for you, but I don't know that what kind of e-commerce you want and what kind of field you want. So that way you have to go out in the market, do some research, and then come back and implement those things.
Yeah, that's
Research is the key over here.
yeah, research is being the key, that's for sure. Because whenever we see new problem statement, every company has its own architecture. Let it be Lyft, Ola, Uber, they all
Yes,
work on the
definitely.
same problem statement every day, but they have different
Mhm.
architecture for it. Speaking of that architecture and also about the way you answered it, it was amazing to hear that yes, this has to be the approach in order to solve the problem. But yet, there comes this problem statement of software requirement, APIs, generation of the
Mhm.
APIs, and also
Mhm.
deploying it. you know there are a lot of frameworks which have come out for optimizing. Hypertuna is there, Optuna is there. For
Yes.
TensorFlow, there are wrappers which are coming up which are making it much more easier. Last week, not last week, 4 days or 5 days before, I just did a podcast with the guy who created the Monk toolkit for the
Mhm.
computer vision. It was based on a TensorFlow, PyTorch, Keras, and all these wrappers, which
Mhm.
made the life easier. I just feel
Definitely.
that also the Spark is also coming out, certifications are coming out by the companies,
Mhm.
and a lot of things are happening. Do you do you really feel that learning new technologies can really save our life today? And also, what do you feel about those frameworks which are coming these days? And would you be amazed if you had found the same framework 5 years before?
Definitely, I would be amazed and relieved if I have found those frameworks 5 years earlier, and it would definitely have made my life easier. And yes, learning new tags will make your life easier, but also those have their own challenges. If community is very rich around that particular piece of tag, then yes, I would definitely deep dive into it. But if community is not mature enough, then I would hesitate a bit, because we are not at that particular stage that if we pick something and we will definitely learn it in a quick manner. We have our own environments to deal with, we have our own challenges to deal with. So help from someone in the community will definitely help you a lot. And as it is said that sharing knowledge increases it, so that particular saying comes true over any piece of tech. It will definitely make your life easier if you know IoT and data science at the same time. But if you are not aware of Raspberry Pi's implementation of TensorFlow, then it will be hell for you.
Yeah, that's for sure.
That's the thing.
That's for sure, because people say advanced technology, names of those technology, probably they know hundreds of frameworks. If you take Cloudera, probably there are wrappers which they have given. Spark, there are wrappers which they have given. Impala, they can speak of technology, but they don't know how to
Yeah.
implement it. That's for sure. You know, I always had this question for an IT guy or a software guy to a present situation. There are people who are just doing testing for Christ's sake, no, never knowing what the testing software is doing to their software at all. There are
Definitely.
functional, there are a lot of other testing techniques which they are involved. I just wanted to ask you this question as a community lead and a community guy who has been working and seeing a lot of folks in the community. Is algorithm a key or the code? That means, when we just look at the ML code which has to be there, it says only a chotu part, it's not the entire thing. But when you look at the brief side, code is also involved, algorithm also involved. What's the key? Is it an algorithm or else it's the code?
Without code, algorithm is just a piece of paper and mathematics. And without algorithm, code is nothing. You can't do anything without algorithm or specific pipeline with your code. So definitely, I would say that not one of them is the key, but both are essential for any kind of technology or language. That yes, algorithm makes some sense of our code. It makes the thing worthwhile to do something. Without algorithm, it is nothing. It is just a garbage written over some framework. And yes, definitely, I would say that both go hand in hand with each other. None of them is prior to one. It's like a hand came first or an egg, a chicken or an egg. It's the same thing. That who is more important in that aspect.
Yeah, when you told the same old example of hen or a egg, I actually go for this old school technique. There has been a lot of ways in which documentations have become more advanced today. There are a lot of new things which you can find when you just start reading a documentation. When you start reading the TensorFlow, okay, you can also process sound in it. That will be your
Yeah.
approach. Yeah, everything is being deployed on the TensorFlow. DSP has been deployed, edge computing has been deployed, everything has been done. I always had this question of how will professionals read in documentation. I just want to ask you this question of how to read a data sheet in a simple words.
About the documentation, I would say that read it like a novel. I myself
But
do the same thing. Uh, these days, you can see code snippets in the documentation, but earlier we didn't have those.
it just
It
said the
was in,
functionality of it.
yeah, it just denoted like in chapters in the our social science book that you flip the page through, you gain some insights, and then move ahead with the same. But these days, you have this interactive documentations, and sometimes even if you are aware of that, then Material UI in React JS is an component wherein you can see and have a look and feel of what kind of UI components you need. If they have written the examples, if you just change few of the properties into it, then their look changes, and based on that, you can get the details out of there. So documentation with bit of code and bit of theory there will be beneficial to you. I would say that if you read something, implement it first, fiddle around it, and then go back to the community that this is how I am this is what I'm looking for, and this is what I am facing right now. So that's the way I would go with. Read documentation, a bit of it, then implement it, and if you face problem, read it again, and if not, then go to community.
Which is the best documentation that you have read? When you said it as a novel, I'm like, okay, how to read it like a novel? That's for sure, because we all go through that phase where we are hidden with one of the miserable thoughts of we will never face this problem, but yet we face this problem, and when we have to solve the
Yeah,
problem statement somehow or the other. Like, which is the best that
definitely.
you have read in terms of documentation?
In terms of documentation, I would say then I'm not sure I can give you the best one. Yeah, I would say that Material UI's documentation is the best one and the most interactive. Then comes the Rasa. Rasa is a chatbot framework in Python. That comes the second best one, and then goes down to TensorFlow.
Why TensorFlow the least?
The least is because they have this n number of aspects of it, and I don't want those aspects for my project. I'm looking for a quick analysis, or rather say quick functionality, and you have to fiddle around the pages to look that is that possible or not. So it's better to go to community rather than go to its documentation in the initial phases.
About the involvement of what community can get you reach your goals very early,
Yeah, definitely.
I always had this, that thought of when will research in India go unique, or when will research in India be advanced, or when will people start looking at India for advanced research? When I listen to the podcast of missile scientists, or probably some other guys who have actually worked in missile technology or other technology, they still say that this technology, what we are working, is already being implemented, but there are some advancement that we have done, but not yet. When will those days come? I'm just curious.
When and where we have enough manpower that stays in India.
Why? Because Raghuram Rajan
Because
also
right,
gave the same statement that I was like, okay.
the thing is, every talented person is being fetched by this developed countries, and they literally give you lucrative offers to go over there. Our IT bodies, or rather say our research bodies, are also doing a tremendous job right now with the manpower they have, but not enough talent has been staying in India. In COVID times, we have seen that many talent came back to India, but 80% of still it is in those countries. When and where we have those, definitely we have facilities that are advanced right now. We have seen the achievements of ISRO during Mangal mission, and during the payload delivery of commercial satellites, which they are doing right now. We definitely have seen those, but as such, the talent which we have, we like the gap between the technology and talent right now. So once and when those gaps have been fulfilled, definitely research in India will be unique. And right now it is unique. It is going in that phase that yes, it is a bit unique, and it is bit more better than what is used to be in early 20s. But yes, it will take some time to be at that state that India can be looked at as an advanced research center.
As an advanced research center, I always had this doubt of what's your view on this medical field, having this involvement of AI, machine learning. Actually, what's your view on data center being involved in medical field? I don't get why data centers are involved, because we are moving towards the on load processing. That means everything has to happen on board, but yet there are data centers involved, yet there are a lot of things which are involved in the medical field. What's your view on it, and how far will it go for this process?
Data security is a key in medical field right now. India is a prominent, you can say, a country where people look at us for medicines and research in medical fields. Right now, if India has been collaborated with many different government bodies or private bodies outside India for vaccine research, vaccination research, trade findings. And yes, India has been there since long. The concern over not going on board with the data of medical field is your health is important factor. details of any human being is very much important. If it leaks out, then certain body can do certain things to it and can create a mess out of it. As we have seen that corona has been a research entity till now, and its modified version is spreading havoc around the world. So that's the reason that they are looking into data security and establishing their own data centers. I had a word with one of the prominent members, and I was privileged to have word with one of the prominent members in medical field. And that's the reason they told me. I asked the same question, that why not go over the cloud systems which perform way better than our traditional data centers. So that's the reason they told us that details of any human being are much more important, and their genome is way more important to us to, and compared to other details like financial details can be leaked, but we have not seen many times that our medical reports or our medical details have been leaked that much. Yeah, that happens, but not as frequent as what we see right now.
Yeah, when you told about, you talked with one of those guys who have really worked in that field, and also they saying you what's the requirement of involving a data scientist now. you know when you just told that, I always had this question of what was your first problem statement and how did you face it, and how did you actually tackle the problem statement, like what are the pros and the cons of it, and also I actually wanted to ask you what are those factors which actually made you, okay, this data science is tough, but I need to give myself a little more time, because everybody is talking about data science today. I want to be a data scientist, I want to be a deep learning, I'm a deep learning enthusiast. LinkedIn tax will be there, deep learning enthusiast, computer vision enthusiast, looking for internship. Yeah, I've also put that, but yeah, kind of what's your thought process when you faced your first problem statement?
My first
That's an
problem
answer which
statement,
has to be
yeah.
answered for the community, because we have a
Yeah,
lot of people like
definitely.
that.
I'll do that. I'll do that. But the thing is, it's a bit funny. Uh, my first problem statement was a competition at BITS Pilani. Uh, yeah, we were selected as MSPs, and we were trained by Microsoft employees over there. And we had this competition around deep learning problem. We were given a CSV table actually over a cloud implementation, that yes, this is the table, you have to implement your algorithm and you have to gain accuracy. We were not aware of the concepts at that time, that these are the concepts of machine learning and deep learning. So what I did is, I first saw the CSV. I came from a technical background in my family as well. So what I saw is there were missing values uh,
NA,
in one of the column.
NA values.
Yeah, NA values were there. So what I did is I filled it manually. There were around 200 of missing values, and that was causing the issue. One of my competitive team, I saw them. I picked a little, and I saw that they were doing. They were talking about missing values. That missing values would help us a lot if we fill them. If we use this. If we use this. I was a newbie in that area. I was in terms of gaming, I was noob in that area at that particular time. So what I did is I filled the value manually from my ad, and then I achieved a 99.5% accuracy. And everyone was like, "What? How did you get that? How did you get that?" And when the judges came and they asked me what you did to achieve this much score, even our score is not more than 87%. How did you achieve this? At that particular point of time, I told them that I did a manual work over there, and they hilariously laughed at us.
There are
Yeah,
imputers which are available today. Like, I didn't know when the imputers were, but there are imputers today. You could have told them imputers, right?
yeah, definitely. But I was a newbie in that area. I was like, I don't know this, and I don't want to do this kind of stuff. I hated programming back then. It was my first year, and we were taught C in our classes. or rather say in our lectures, and I hated C at that part of time. So yeah, I did some manual work and then achieved this. It's a bit funny in my sense that we were joking about it the whole day that yeah, this happened, and fond memories of those times. That was my first problem, and since then I have improved a bit. You can say that I am not doing a manual job right now. I am using some
Everything.
concepts, and that's the way to approach it. That using some concepts, not to do stuff manually.
Yeah, sometimes manually might work because there
Might
are
work, but
might work.
yeah, it did work for me. But yeah, it's not the correct way.
Yeah, when you told about that manual implementation, okay, fine. There has to be something as an insight that you have given in order to solve that problem. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But like 2015, a disruption happened. TensorFlow was open sourced by Google. I was in class 11 and I heard that news. Okay, fine. Open source चलेगा. वो तो कंपनी है ना,
Yeah.
कमा रहा है ना, तो इसीलिए they are just open sourcing it. And
Mm.
after me coming to the engineering at 2017, I also found that Facebook has stopped this AI research because AI systems started communicating with their own languages.
Communicating with each other. Yeah.
Yeah, with their own languages, and they stopped it. And 3 months later, they came out with an QNN, quantum neural network package, and I was
Mhm.
amazed by it because when I saw a lot of packages before, because I was researching about it, but I was not implementing during my PU. I was in PU when I was in
Yeah.
my 2015, 2016. So yeah, nothing much. We used to see MIT OCW and all. You've gone through that process of how the technology has happened. And when I hear some people saying my director came to the college and told me TensorFlow from Google has been open sourced, what's your view on it? They asked all these questions. When I asked to the seniors of mine, what was that one factor which really changed the game of technology as soon as it got open sourced? Because bioinformatics people are using it left, right, center,
Yeah,
left
they
corner,
are implementing
everywhere.
it like
TensorFlow,
it's their own thing.
it's their own thing. But TensorFlow is something which is more restricted to computer science people. But yet, bioinformatics, biotechnology, everybody is using. Has it really changed the game? Because when I see papers after 2015, it's a different story. I see
Yeah,
before
definitely.
2015.
Before that, those were more technical and in depth with algorithms and stuff like that. But after that, if you read papers, then you see that they have implemented this network and they have increased their accuracy by a bit and they have published it. And it came rapidly since then. And I would agree with you that game has changed since then because not sure what the bigger plan by the Google is, and we won't ever understand the bigger plans of Google. But open sourcing TensorFlow was the biggest thing they gave to community in terms of software upgradation. And the documentation was also that much finesse by that time that yes, anyone can read it easily with some patience and then they can implement it. And community has helped a lot since then. You can see TensorFlow questions trending during 2015 to 2017 over Stack Overflow that I want to implement this, I'm facing this issue, and Google developers coming there to help them. And yes, that's what has helped a lot because Python by that time was a mature language. And since then, Python 3 was bit new, but it was a bit, you can say, mature with experience of Python 2. And that's what has helped a lot to the community that Python 3 came meanwhile, TensorFlow came together, became mature together. And yes, the implementation was a bit easy using those stacks. So that's why, yeah, TensorFlow was a game changer in this area in terms of spreading the data science to different fields, not restricting it to computer science itself.
When you told about not restricting to the computer science itself, as an engineer who has worked for quite a while in the community, and also you told that you were as an MSP in the first year going inside Bits Pilani solving the problem. I just want to ask you this one question. Like, you've seen packages from quite a while now, frameworks from quite a while. Which is the best thing that you have worked upon? which is that one thing that you have coded with a lot of ease and a lot of comfort, and also you were happy when you coded with that framework? Or
Framework in terms of ID, I would say that I love working with IntelliJ. IntelliJ is one of the best experience I had in my life. It's so easy that you just install the virtual environment, do stuff there, and just start coding, and it autofills your. Its suggestions are way nice than what other frameworks have. In terms of data science frameworks, I'm much more inclined to go with PyTorch rather than TensorFlow, as it gives me the flexibility of implementing my code and my own logic in terms of bit propagation loss and accuracy matrices. So yeah, working with PyTorch was much easier than working with TensorFlow.
yeah, when you told about PyTorch, yeah, I used to feel the same, because there are Keras which is working with a TensorFlow backend, which is also easy, but yet I don't
Mhm.
feel that comfort when I start using TensorFlow and Keras, but I feel that comfort when I start using
With
PyTorch, because it's
yeah,
much more
PyTorch
easier.
definitely, yeah,
You know,
and
uh,
flexibility is there with
flexibility.
PyTorch.
Talking about this flexibility and how AI has been implemented from Facebook, Google, IBM, Microsoft, top-notch companies which are going behind. I just want to ask you this one question. What's your view on AI alignment? And also, will we ever stop developing?
We will never stop developing softwares. That's the sure thing. Otherwise, our routine will be gone from our side. We have to create a dependency. That's the joke. There is a dependency over softwares. Even Tesla has their own AI research area and their own software implementations with their own frameworks being in the market right now. So yes, we won't ever stop developing softwares. Softwares are the key to ease human effort and do faster calculation than a human can. So that's the no from my end, that no, we won't stop things over there. About AI alignment, there are certain controversies being held over there. Even
There
Sophia,
was
the robot.
Asilomar principle, which Elon Musk signed during 2017, 2018 odd.
Mhm.
That actually became a big news, because I was learning AI during that time. Not AI, actually deep learning, not AI, deep learning during that time, when everybody saying, okay, Elon Musk is doing something else with the deep learning India. And also, we are not very close to the AI also. What's your view on regarding all those things included? Because there are a lot of principles which are robotics also has been implementing in order to make it more secure.
AI at the moment is not secure in any chance. We are just implementing the concepts that we have and developing certain things from it. But in terms of research, I'm not sure that I share the enthusiasm of AI activist, that yes, AI is secure in some terms. We will need certain time to make things like the movies. Yes, there are certain things in AI alignment due to which, due to ethical reasons, Facebook had to shut down their two AIs which were communicating with each other. And even there are certain rumors around Google being working on some super intelligence. I'm not sure that that's true, but those rumors have some basis that they are working on certain research like that. AI alignment will be achieved once and when we are sure that AI won't go against us. And that's not up to us because we can't see what's inside a neural network, what decisions they are taking. We can control the output, yes, we can restrain the outputs, but what's the thinking process going in the actual neural network when the features are being generated and training is going on? We can't say that. That's abstract from us. So that's the pinpoint and the grenade which we are sitting on right now, that it can blast us in the face and it can also save us from certain things down the line. But that's a thing of future, and let's wait how it goes.
Talking about grenades, there are a lot of missile scientists who are learning deep learning, machine learning in order to give the perfect trajectory and everything. There are a
Yes.
lot of problem statement. As you told, problem statements are endless. There are a lot of scope
Yeah,
in getting the problem
the
statement.
scope is very huge.
That's for sure. That's for sure. But like when I see people saying I've solved hundreds of problem statement, but yet my experience is not good enough to solve this problem statement. Do you really feel so that experience really matters here?
Experience in terms of years, I'm not sure that matters, but experience in terms of diverse problem statements and difficulty level, that surely matters a lot. Because that's the thing that will develop you in terms of technology. The higher the difficulty you solve, the better you get in solving the lower level problems. And that's the way you should go. You should challenge yourself now and then that, yes, this is the thing I have achieved right now. Let's achieve a bigger thing than this. I just take an example. I had an financial problem and I had implemented ANN from TensorFlow directly. And then I thought that, yes, I have implemented it directly. Now let's take it a notch further and then implement it using PyTorch. Created my own neural network, designed my own statistical parameters, and then implemented the same thing. It took some time, but yeah, the experience you get developing the higher categorical problems, the more you gain confidence in solving the problems of low level.
Yeah, when you told about gaining the experience of problem statements and also solving the problem, it's a new thing. It's a new thing for an EC guy like me, and electronics and a communication person, because we all move towards how the transistor switches. That's our key thing. That's the thing. Because when you give me
Yeah,
an SoC, I'll start reading the data and I'll start implementing. If you say me, okay, do something in Python, okay, fine, I can do to some extent, get the model, deploy it. Probably I can write an app in Flutter. That's for sure. But like,
that's really good.
yeah, no, that's what I can do. That's what I can do. There are a lot of things which have been addressed in terms of problem statement. Can it be bioinformatics, neuroscience, deep
Mhm.
learning being influenced by the neuroscience, neuromorphic computing? A lot of things are coming up. What's the influence that software and hardware has given out today in terms of anything? Let it be from any field. What do you feel about these?
Earlier, what happened is my brother passed out, not my real brother, my cousin brother passed out in 2010 from his engineering, computer science. At that particular point of time, his friends in EC and even electrical were not aware of any programming languages apart from embedded C, which they had to use. In just 2010, this situation was there. He was the only one placed in an MNC during that time from his whole college. And yeah, the situation was a bit restricted to computer science during that time. If you have asked that I need a laptop during 2010, and you being an electrical guy, your father would have denied it. Your job is to fiddle with wires. You don't need computers or laptops. But if you are an electrical engineer in this time and you are studying, and if you demand uh, hardware for your needs, then they would definitely bring you some, because those are the needs right now. Software and hardware have much accelerated and integrated in our life during this a decade time, that right now each and everyone is dependent upon it. Doctors don't need any kind of software implementation earlier, a decade ago. But right now, if you see any hospital, they would definitely have their hospital management systems. They would have patient records. They would definitely have their own databases and online securities, their website, their payment portals, and stuff like that. Because advancement in digital terms and availability of bandwidth and cheaper internet has made this possible for all of us to access the hardware, accelerate the hardware, and include the softwares into it in each and every area.
No, algorithms are getting more brute force these days. There has been lot and lot of number crunching which is happening from the algorithm itself. There is sparse involved, sparsity,
Yeah,
categorical sparse entity, and also there are a lot of new statistical approach which software is also giving, like TF dot function. It was not there, but
hmm,
yet now it's available in
now it's
TensorFlow
available.
2.0. But
Hmm.
like, what do you feel about how these algorithms are influencing in terms of hardware as in performance? Last time when I had an podcast with one of the person, the Monk AI, the Monk toolkit, he told, okay, you can have a DXA system, but you can't implement a brain completely on it, though you have such a great compute. But people are
Definitely.
more trying to implement a brain on an edge. What's that craziness about this algorithm, brute force search algorithms, and hardware, everything that is going on in terms of development? There is CUDA involved, there is everything. Whatever is getting there, it's getting stacked. Do you feel that it's an overkill to the computer what we are just doing, or else should we need to have a little lighter approach in order to give that computation much more feasible?
If there would be no overkill, then we won't be moving ahead with the hardware acceleration. Uh, it is a bit necessary, but not always good as an approach to do brute force of algorithms into it. It's kind of a thing that uh, if a semi-literate person is brute forcing an algorithm is like in giving a computer to a semi-literate person. It would definitely code around and fiddle around the hardware, and it would break down the hardware at some point of time, but not in a methodological way. You need a method to implement this kind of stuff. Definitely, I agree with the person and you that it is not necessary to do so while we are working with AI and ML algorithms, that you forcefully implement a neural network when your problem can be solved just by knife based implementation. So that's the thing, that you don't go for the overkill process. Yes, researchers can do that, but implementers like us, we don't need that. It's just waste of our time and hardware.
you know there has been a lot of speculations here and there that there are old school concepts like probability node and everything. What's the influence of the math in the present technology that you have seen today in terms of any problem statement that you have solved, and also what's the influence of probability that we are having today, because everything is probability. TensorFlow probability is used in AlphaFold 2 as an software dependency. There are a lot of things which are coming out in terms of probability, mathematics. Everybody, let it be a guy who doesn't even belong to mathematics field at all. Okay, let me just say mechanism of action, which is a drug development, yet they are using probability, machine learning, deep learning, statistics, everything. What's the influence that we are getting? Because everybody is moving towards math. Is it the memes which is actually affecting them to learn math behind the machine learning?
Yeah,
What is it?
definitely. The hype around machine learning is so much that every now and then a guru of machine learning will say that mathematics is the key. And I agree with them definitely. But if you are not in the research area, or if you are not working with the researchers, then I'm not sure that you should go with mathematical approaches. For me, there are two different kind of programmers. One who will screw everything to get at the bottom, and one who will say this, yes, this is implemented, go to hell, and then finish the stuff. Those are the two different programmers which I have. One, the knowledge seekers, they will go to every depth, read every book, and then come up with the same solution that programmer guy who is not reading those things can do. So the mindset here matters and the application matters over here. If you are doing in research, then yes, definitely be the first. And if you don't have any interest of being a researcher and just want to implement and develop solutions for your clients, then don't go into that much depth and just move ahead with the programming. About the trend of and sorry, about the influence of probability and statistics, I would say that they are part of our life since the humanity began civilization. And yes, they will continue to work with us when and where we even move to next planet or do colonization of galaxies. At that particular point of time, probability and statistics will be the key concepts of doing anything. Because in software, it is either an or situation. You have 10 different outcomes of an software. It's based on your inputs that rather you will input this kind of stuff or this. So that's probability in every situation when we deal with software. And when and where data comes, statistics will be there. If you hate it, if you love it, if it kills you, it will be there. It's an integrated part of working with the data. And that's what I will say around this. That it will stay with you. If you move with it, then you will progress. If you don't, then it will stop you at that particular point of time.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way of answering as a machine learning engineer, to have that people pull into the statistics and probability. That's for sure. Probably by listening to this answer, probably most of the people who listen this will start learning linear algebra, calculus, probability, optimization, everything in code.
I had to deal with the same scenario.
Yeah, that's what we all deal with it one or the other
Yeah.
day. We all have to deal with it. There has been a lot of ways in which scientists like Jitendra Malik, an academician who is in the research for quite a while now in the computer vision, he always says this statement, if you want 99.9% accuracy, work for 5 years. Let it be any problem statement. He really says that. What's the amount of work
Definitely.
what's the amount of man force and what's the amount of work in order to get the AGI working is required? What the amount of work and the man force required in order to get the AGI working?
I would say collective brain of all people over Earth right now present will require to make the AGI, because as an humanity, decision on one thing may will differ from person to person. If I love a certain kind of food, it's not necessary that you like the food in same quantity. You may want it bit sour, you may want it bit savory. It depends upon you how you like it. So yeah, he is correct in terms of the manpower and hours and data needed. Because yes, without research you cannot upgrade to next level. You need time to do research. And if you want your problem to be the utmost and definite solution, that yes, this is the benchmark, there is nothing ahead from this and people will use this, then yes, definitely you have to invest your time into that to gain that particular matrices that you seek for.
As an engineer student who is working in the ECE, which is an odd field for deep learning enthusiasm, that I know
No,
that for
it's not definitely odd.
odd. Yeah.
It's the perfect field to do.
Yeah. Thank
It's
you
like
for
computer
saying.
science, and yeah, without hardware you can't do anything.
Yeah,
You
that's
can implement the softwares, you can implement things,
it's an
but
API
without
jugaad.
yeah, it's an API jugaad.
Yeah, I always
Without
say this.
without API, without camera, you can't detect the vehicles. You can't have the images. Without Raspberry Pi, you can't have the
Edge
smart
computing.
homes available. Yeah, smart homes available. So the EC peoples are integrated part of data science. Without hardware, we won't even have the data to process this kind of things.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. As an hardware person, I've been studying a lot on Moore's law, Dennard's law, and one thing that really fascinates me is Amdahl's law. I have actually asked you in this question. I'll read out that. Please bear with me. It's a long question, by the way.
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Amdahl's law states that the performance improvement to be gained from using some faster mode of execution is limited to the fraction of the time the faster mode can be. Will this work in our world, in order to get the AI, and likewise the man or at least human at least at the end of the day. There has been a lot of speculations here and there on how hardware can replace a human in a lot of fields. Robotics, RPA, the new trend. There's a lot of
Yes,
things. How can
ERPA.
this law actually favor in giving that insight on what hardware can be in the future?
Recently, I implemented an RPA solution for an MNC in US. They are an auction-based company. So what they have to do is they have to manually enter the prices of the auction bid that is highest. Till now, they did the same, that they had this 50 to 100 different developers, or rather say workforce, which would take the price of the highest bid, enter it in their system, ask to the buyer that whether this is the price you would go with, or there are negotiation fees and stuff like that. So what in RPA I did is I automated that particular task. Earlier, 1 minute was required for each person to implement those numbers. Right now, 3 seconds are required for the robot of RPA. We call it robot. The RPA robot to fill in the forms and send message to the buyer. That's how quick this has become, from 60 seconds to 3 seconds. That's a huge difference in terms of
20x reduced
production.
load on
Yeah,
the
we
time.
did that. And we don't require 50 to 100 different employees. Just two robots are enough to process their whole day's computational needs and the bidding which are going on right now. So yeah, I would stand by that law, that it depends upon how much you use the faster mode of transportation. If you have Bugatti and you want to go from Bombay to Pune, then it would be very easy. But if and only the road is much smoother, and how much time you invest into extending the highest, rather say, be at the peak of your speed. Bugatti can go up to 170 on Indian roads. So that depends. If you go 170 the whole time, then you reach faster. If you get stuck in the traffic, then you're not utilizing full potential of the car.
Yeah, speaking of the potential, I always had this question: is TensorFlow optimized for hungry learning? Because
Not
everything is data,
no.
everything is data.
I would not recommend the native implementation of TensorFlow for hungry learning. You need some tweaks and turnarounds with optimizations to achieve the state there which is optimized for this phase, that you feed data constantly to it and it starts learning from the same.
And also it makes a lot of sense when we say theory in deep learning is something different when you start implementing with TensorFlow or any
Implementing,
framework,
definitely.
by the way. No,
Definitely.
there is always that one factor which always says, do you think the laws of AI, you know, as an AI deep learning engineer who has worked quite a while in this field, do you think laws of AI and robotics still make sense to the working scenario of the technology? Let be a surgery that you're learning, that it is learning in order to be an assistant to a doctor, or let it be it performing a surgery. Are these sort of alignments going hand in hand in order to give a right approach in getting the robot do a task of a man, and it not overdoing its limitations? What's your view on it? You told that you have worked on RPA and all these kind of solution. What's your view on it?
Yes, I would say that it is right now at the phase that it can be the assistant and not overcome the person which is doing the stuff right now. Recently, a development has been done wherein a banana was used as a surgical
Yeah, even
patient.
a grape also.
Grape was
Grape
also
also
used
used.
for the same thing. Yes, stitches were made very effectively by the robot which was performing these things, but it was observed uh, by the experts in the area. So yes, it can be the assistant, but it cannot overcome the person at the moment, because there's no learning curve at present which can be that much steep that it can go and it can overcome the person.
When you just said about this is the last question for this podcast and we'll have a end
Sure,
note, but
sure, sure.
yeah,
And
that's for
no
sure. But
worries.
like, you know let me just ask you this one question. Is system architecture robust enough to give machine learning security? Because when I started learning 2017, there was a lot of speculation machine learning is not secure, algorithms are not secure, anybody can penetrate it kind of situation. Today the situation is completely different because everything they are trying to optimize in terms of making it secure and also robust in terms of system. Are machine learning system good enough to give this security and fairness? What's your view on the
Fairness,
present?
fairness, no. Machine learning models are not at all fair. They are highly biased at the moment because we have data in that particular order. Algorithm doesn't know anything. It's what we feed that affects it. So yes, system architecture is the key to make our machine learning models more secure and fair. If you follow the architecture to a bit and without any objections, then I'm sure your model will be fair and your model needs a bit of security in terms of what kind of data it goes inside. So yeah, system architecture right now is you can say a key role in making a machine learning model secure and fair. So I would definitely use those predefined rules to go ahead with my ML implementations.
Yeah, Akshay, bro, thank you so much for actually coming to this
Thank you
podcast.
for
Being
asking such beautiful questions. I'm
thank you,
really glad that I was able to answer those questions.
thank you so much. Thank you so much for being part of the podcast in a very short notice and also answering in such a way that it actually answered a lot of questions in order to give it. I feel, podcasts are something like there are some insights which you can't say in workshops, there are insights which you can't say in normal lectures, but there are some things which can be demystified in the podcast. That's what I feel all about. And I think we have
I do feel the
demystified.
same. I do feel the same because it's an easy way to convey what you
What
feel
we
and
feel.
what are your thoughts to the community and make it bit more easier for them to learn.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time and appreciate your support in order to give community back something back. Thank you
And
so much
kudos
for.
to you too as well because you are doing this hard work also and setting up the podcast. I would definitely recommend users to visit Vishwas and then take insights from his as well.
Thank you so much, bro. Thank you so much.